Welcome to the Ottawa Business Journal's live broadcast of what employers need to know about accessibility standards in 2024. I'm Michael Curran from the Ottawa Business Journal. It's wonderful to have you with us today. We are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. We've got a big audience of people who are all keen to learn about today's important topic. A reminder that we want to make this broadcast as interactive as possible, so you can ask questions depending on your social media platform of choice. Just use the chat function. There is a lot of focus today on creating inclusive workplaces. It's critical to remember that inclusivity includes people with disabilities. That's why today's show features an expert who has worked right here in Ottawa for 3 decades to help people with disabilities find meaningful work. What's unique with our guest is she's not just a rehabilitation expert, she's also a small business owner who knows what it takes to keep a small business alive. She can relate to the challenges you have. Experience has taught our guest that employers love hiring people with disabilities, especially when they have trustworthy guidance on the best way of doing it. That said, keeping up with the standards and regulations around these issues is not easy, especially if you're a small employer operating on a shoestring budget. That's why we're here today, to give you what you need to know about accessibility standards in 2024. Okay, let's introduce our guest. She is returning, by the way. She is the founder and director of rehabilitation at Performance Plus Rehabilitative Care, better known as PPRC. She joins us today to mark the International Day of Persons with Disabilities that took place earlier this week on Sunday, December 3rd. Our expert matches employers with the right candidates to provide guidance and mentorship to ensure success in that matchup. Today, she's here because there are some new accessibility standards she wants to bring to our attention. Please welcome Linda Simpson. Hello, Linda.
For the wonderful introduction.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to set this up properly. And when we were doing a little bit of research here, Linda, I was on your LinkedIn profile and I wanted to check a fact. You're celebrating your 30th anniversary with PPRC in May 2024. I can't believe that. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been quite a journey. And we actually, Performance Plus was the first company to introduce a mobile assessment to Canada. So initially, when we first opened our business, we traveled across Canada to do functional abilities assessments to see if we could help employers bring people back to the workplace.
That's excellent. And Linda, if you don't mind me asking a personal question, to devote 30 years of your life to something obviously indicates your passion about this. Can I ask you a personal question? Where does that passion come from in terms of wanting to integrate people with disabilities into the workforce?
Well, I think what I always say is that I like to blend, the caring side of the house, or the rehabilitation side of the house, with the business side of the house. And I do come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I like to blend both. So I really believe that I understand the business needs, being a business owner and having come from a family of business owners. And, I guess on the personal side, the caring part really comes from my mother, really, being kind, being caring, being respectful. Those values, are deeply entrenched. And I think that combining those two, can really help us be effective, because we can help businesses understand that there's some changes that need to be made. And we can do that in an easy fashion and not make it complicated for them, with the supports that they need, just the way our clients need support, the persons with disabilities that we serve.
That's a beautiful thought, I think. And I do agree with you. You bring kind of the caring and the business together. So there's a caring aspect to make sure we're finding meaningful work for people with disabilities, but you also keep your business owner hat on and process it through that very kind of practical lens too. Well, we've got a great show lined up. We're going to give people a little bit of a preview here with our agenda. So in topic number 1, we're talking about proposed standards for federal employers and federally regulated employers. In topic number 2, we'll be talking about where should employers focus their efforts. In number 3, we'll talk about how PPRC, your company, Linda, can help. And then, as indicated, sometime around 12:25, we'll be doing a question and answer feature. Again, to our live audience, be sure to ask those questions early so we can pick them out and make sure Linda gets your question. With that, Linda, we'll jump right in with 2 feet and get to topic number 1. What standards have been proposed for federal and federally regulated employers?
So I'd like to just, begin by mentioning that the accessibility standards are in a draft format. So the public actually had the opportunity to review them, and the deadline was November the 14th, and they're very robust. And I think that, they're set up in a really nice framework that will help people make adjustments. And the vision really is that, we want to make Canada accessible by 2040. That's the entire vision of this entire process. Where it applies to employment specifically, we want to ensure that employers understand the framework, and it's a standard. It's a recommendation for you, and it will be, once the comments are reviewed, it will be the minister who will decide whether or not this goes into regulation or not. So I just want to bring that to light and make sure that people understand that these are proposed at this moment, and that, we'll see what happens towards the latter part of 2024. But I think it's important to be prepared because obviously Canada is moving in that direction.
Wonderful.
And I just also wanted to mention that, the vision really truly is that we will have an accessible, an inclusive, and a barrier-free workplace, and one that's free also of discrimination. So, which will make it, more comfortable for people with disabilities to feel that they belong in the workplace as well. And we know that there are systemic barriers out there. We encounter them every day. And we really want to ensure, when we talk about the caring part, that the services are actually person-centered, that people with disabilities get to participate in the development of the framework in their workplaces. And they have lots to contribute, lots of knowledge and lots of experience. And I have learned over the years that it's really important to include them and to collaborate with them. And I've learned those lessons myself as a business owner.
And your point's well taken right off the bat. These are for federal and federally regulated. But I think what you're underlining here, Linda, even if you're a small business owner and these regulations and guidelines don't match up to you, they should still be relevant to you in wanting to create an inclusive workplace.
Yeah, because what it really does is it encourages you to, have that accessible and inclusive workplace. And they want to ensure that you're also disability confident, that you're aware of the disability etiquette. When you're welcoming someone to your business or to a workplace, what must you do to, make them feel comfortable? What's the right thing to do? And most employers, have a fear. So we do education. So education around disability awareness and etiquette is really critical because, you can go and implement immediately afterwards. That's what I like about it. We just try and keep those processes simple. And they want, of course, the workplace to be inclusive by design. So forward thinking about, what is it that we need to, what do we need to assess in terms of our workplace now? What policies do we need to implement? What do we need to change? What do we need to include in our plans? And there's lots of expertise and lots of supports out there to help with that. And also to create an awareness that people with disabilities have talents. Many of them, have double degrees. Some of them, have master's degrees. And some of them are, people who, have come from high school, go off to college or go off to university. And so, we find that we are having a lot of employers reach out to us because we have a large talent pool of exceptional candidates. And, the standard really wants you to recognize that people have talents just like you, right?
And let's talk about this concept of employment life cycle, employment life cycle in terms of making sure there's accessibility throughout that.
Yeah. So when we talk about the life cycle, we talk about, that stage of where you're recruiting, where you're actually making the offer and hiring, when you're onboarding, when you're looking at career advancement and training, when you're looking at promotion, or you're looking at maybe deploying someone to another location, or the period of employment is coming to an end, right? So those are all of the aspects that touch the employment life cycle, and those those cycles will change over time. So you might be a healthy worker today, but tomorrow you yourself could be impacted with a health condition, and you could experience a lived disability as well. So, and we think about people who wear glasses, right? And their vision deteriorates. It's a perfect example that, you can't read the fine print on your screen without your glasses. So you actually do have an accommodation if you wear glasses. So those are some of the things that the standard addresses and really talks more about, how they talk about the guiding principles that are really based on the accessibility standards now that are created, so that you don't have to go and create the accessibility guidelines. They're there for you. So you just really have to, look at the Accessible Canada Act, and those guidelines are there to walk you through the various different steps. And it's really to design your policies and your programs, your services and your systems by including people with disabilities so that they have input, and it will make a difference. And at PPRC, we have 75% of our team who self-identify as living with a disability. And I have innovators and creators and people who contribute. So I really collaborate. I go to them for consultations and I collaborate. And they continuously elevate the bar. I ask them, what is it that I could do to be more effective for you? So I find that that's really helpful by just having those conversations and that collaboration, those opportunities for people to express themselves
Yeah.
and, provide feedback.
It's such a great point there. First of all, you're practicing what you preach, and I think fundamentally in this topic, it's like the guidelines exist. If you're a small business or any size organization, why wouldn't you embrace some of these standards? Take advantage of them, leverage them to make the hard work's been done. The outreach from the federal government to draft these guidelines and standards and that. Let's move on to our second topic, Linda, which is where should employers focus their efforts? And maybe you could enlighten us on this a little bit.
So we talked a little bit about, the education that there is the guideline is recommending education, obviously education for human resource managers, for, leaders. Of course, it's going to start with your leadership, and for workers. And as well, labor needs to be educated because they also have a responsibility to ensure that the people they represent, are accommodated in the workplace. And oftentimes we deal with those sorts of issues where accommodation is not being made. And, when we're talking to the union, we want the union as well to be ensured that they're providing access to their employees, that they're supporting them appropriately so that they have accessible meetings and those sorts of things. And then when it comes to onboarding, we want to ensure that there's a good culture within that organization, that people can feel comfortable to come to their manager or their supervisor or the business to talk about, their needs for accommodation, that they could be far more effective if they were accommodated. But it does require, there's some onus there on the worker as well to self-disclose and self-identify, but the culture has to be one of trust. So you have to ensure that your people feel comfortable to come to you and trust. And the research is showing that 4 to 7% of people, are disclosing according to what the employer believes. But the most recent research in 2023 is indicating that actually it's more like 25% of people who actually, a quarter of your workforce, actually live with a disability and or a health condition, and perhaps they have not disclosed. So I don't think that employers can afford to ignore that 25%, because if they all walked out the door tomorrow, we're already having problems. We could be even in more serious problems, right? So I think that those are things to keep in mind and be aware of.
It strikes me too, Linda, that if you are signaling to your organization that you understand people have disabilities and you're willing to accommodate them, so you're signaling that from a leadership perspective. You're going to have those people, as you just indicate, that might not really want to disclose what their disability is. You might have them come, and if you have an honest discussion and there are some great accommodations, like, your level of engagement with that employee is going to be far greater than what it was before, and maybe even they'll be more productive. So it's a meaningful relationship and discussion.
Yeah, and I think, with regards to that, I think that when you're looking at your, recruitment, you want to ensure that you're communicating on your website or in your posting that you're committed, right? You can make a public statement that you're committed, and you invite all persons, including people with disabilities, to apply, because then they begin to feel comfortable. And then when we look at recruitment itself, we want to ensure that you encourage that self-identification. If they feel comfortable to self-disclose that they have a need, they don't have to discuss their medical condition to say, well, I would require, I do have a service dog, and my service dog will be accompanying me, right? Or, I do require access to the building. We need to make sure that that building is accessible. But you want to be able to offer that to people at the onset and make sure you're hosting your interview in a location that is indeed accessible and that is barrier-free. And it's really all about removing those barriers to employment. And the same with your job posting, right? You want to, you could offer the fact that, and this is, the standards are saying this, offer the fact that you do have an accommodation policy. And if they'd like to read it and see it in advance, and this is the person you should contact within the organization if you have further questions. So someone who is trained to respond, who understands your needs. And the same with in the standards, they talk about the job application, those applicant tracking systems. And there are some guidelines, and the Supreme Court of Canada has also given some guidelines around these are the things that must exist, because people have to have access. Or you could offer, sometimes they will offer alternative methods. If you prefer, this is another method you can apply, or reach out to us. So give them options, and that's, makes it more inclusive for them. And also at the interview, make sure that people are trained at the interview, that your HR managers are trained, that they have disability awareness and etiquette, that they're approaching people appropriately, they're using plain language so that everyone can understand, and they're being inclusive in their practices. And it's really helping employers to build those best practices. It doesn't come overnight, it comes with time. We all make mistakes. That's how we learn as adults. We have all made our mistakes in our journeys, right? In our business journey.
I mean, that's one thing I always appreciate about our discussions, Linda, that you're like, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. We're all trying to figure things out in life, and, approach it with some goodwill and some compassion, and that will probably get you a long way. I also like the point you made too, that this kind of exists on two different levels. It exists on like a policy and leadership perspective, but there's a practicality too about whether they can access your website, whether they can fill out the form, whether they can enter your office, whether they can feel comfortable in a boardroom interview. All of this, it's two different levels, right? It's not the theoretical, but then there's the real practical that you bring to the table, Linda.
Yeah, and I think, if people pay attention to, being more inclusive, you communicate that, you're going to have a better organization as a result of it. You're going to attract people to your organization, because right now they're looking to see, what commitments are you making, right? And if you want to attract that talent, and especially people with disabilities, they're going to be checking out your website for accessibility. They're going to be looking at, what are you doing in the community? What activities do you participate in? Do you celebrate things like National Disability Employment Awareness Month? Do you celebrate Mental Health Week? What are some of the activities that you're doing? And those are all things that, are in the standards around encouraging employers to develop some of those practices and set up resource groups. Or you might set up, if it's a smaller, business, it might be a group of employees, maybe one or two employees that have a committee, and they're going to be working on a strategy and a plan, and make sure that you have accountabilities, that you have SMART goals, so that you can achieve those goals and come back and reevaluate. And these are some simple strategies that people can put in place in their businesses, even if you're small. I think that the supply can apply to everyone, because
Yeah, we had Linda freeze there. She'll probably be back in a second here. I'll just jump in to remind everyone that we're coming up to our Q&A session in just a second. You're back, Linda, by the way. I'll just continue on here for a second. So we're coming up to our Q&A session around 12:25. We've already had some people asking some questions. Thank you, Jordan, for breaking the ice there. And we'll come to your question in just a few minutes. But again, if you've got some questions for Linda, let's take advantage of this opportunity. And you were at a perfect point of transition there, Linda. I think that a lot of people aspire to these things, to be accessible, to have a great workplace, but there's some questions and some hesitations, and this is where in topic number 3, PPRC really comes in and can help be like a partner to you to make some progress on this issue. So let's jump into topic number 3, and maybe you can start off by talking about something it's an interesting word, and you used it before, etiquette. So talk to us about the etiquette of dealing with people with disabilities.
So, disability awareness and etiquette is really important in the workplace, because if you come, let's say, for example, you have someone with a vision loss coming to your restaurant, and you present them with a menu, and of course they don't see what's on the menu. But you could, if they have a service dog or they're using a white cane, you might be able to, see that that they actually may need some additional support. So you could ask them, you could approach them to say, we do have a Braille menu. Would that be helpful for you? Or, how could I help you? Would you like me to read the menu to you? How could I help you, with your choice today? So it's really just asking the person how you might support, I think those are simple things. If you ask me, then I can tell you. And then, 55% of the marketplace is controlled by people with disabilities, their families, and their friends. So the minute they know that, you are inclusive as a business, they will come to you and your business will grow. And, that will make a difference in terms of your revenues, right? But, word gets around. And, we've seen it where, Tim Hortons, for example, accommodated, people who were deaf and who had hearing loss. So, so they became a very, very popular Tim Hortons, attracting that 55%. So
Gotcha.
that's one of the things that we do, is we really make you feel comfortable around, what is it that you can say and what is it that you should say and how should you say it. And I think that, it's a simple process of just learning that. And you're going to make mistakes, but we can say, hey, have no fear. We're here to help you out, right? And that's really what it's all about. It's really just doing some education. Feedback that we get since 2018 is saying everybody should take this. Because, if I learn some strategies, I can be more interactive with people with disabilities. I build my own confidence, right? And I understand, the needs of the workplace, and possibly the needs of my customers, coming to my establishment.
Yeah, your point is well taken. I think it starts with like being aware of it, and then being able to recognize it and then with the etiquette, just asking the question, right? Don't make assumptions. Everyone's going to respond favorably, likely, if you ask the question, do you need assistance? Can I do that? That's a very helpful statement. And then they can indicate whether they want to or not, because in some cases, probably, Linda, some people are going to be like, no, I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can interpret in your example, the menu and order on my own. So it's a good common sense approach. You also have the ability, besides the general etiquette training, Linda, to do some customized training. So maybe talk to us about how PPRC determines whether someone needs customized training and what that might look like.
So generally the business, or it might be a government department, might approach us and we'll talk to them about their needs. What is it that they're looking for? So are they looking for us to deliver a customized, presentation to them, or training that is directed specifically at HR? And we have done that at the request of certain human resource departments within the federal government. Or it might be a business that's really looking to just really increase the knowledge around accommodation. They don't really know, what does an accommodation entail? How do I go about creating an accommodation plan? How do I approach my worker, after they've approached me? What do I do? What does the plan include? Where are the resources? Most importantly, people don't know where to go. How, if the person's saying I need a screen reader, where do I get a screen reader for that individual? They may have their own tools at home, but how can I make my workplace accessible? And so we have an adaptive technology specialist that will help and support that. So if an employer comes to us and we are placing an individual in their workplace and needed accommodation, they need accommodation. We will have a letter of accommodation identifying the barriers and how to remove the barriers. And we do that a lot within the federal departments. We present that when we did the federal internship program. We made it easy. So, and then we worked very closely with their tech departments to say, here's some things that we can easily do to support you and to make it easy for this worker. And remember, we also have to come back and check to make sure that the accommodation is effective, and it should be reviewed periodically as the standards highlight as well.
Okay. And this is where that 30 years, I can't imagine, of experience comes into play, because you've probably seen so many different situations, and you bring that element of wanting to accommodate and practicality, which is, I think, your superpower there, Linda. Well, time's flying. Wow, 12:25. We got a bunch of questions, and as indicated, we want to make sure this is as interactive as possible. So I think Jordan, thanks for again breaking the ice, Jordan. I'm going to bring your question on screen here, Linda. It's an interesting one. Here we go. Sorry, there we go. How, if any, is an employer required to install or instill accommodations for visiting guests, say an in-person meeting for someone who might have a disability? So we've been talking about and making the assumption that people are employees, or we're assuming they're clients. But what if it's a guest? What if it's someone coming to your workplace, Linda? What would be required, or what should you keep in mind?
So, I mean, obviously, if you're having a meeting, you want to make sure the meeting place is accessible, right? And that that individual is aware of any obstacles that might exist. So, for example, if the building's under construction, you might want to identify that there is some construction at the front door, and describe what that is. As someone with vision loss in particular, that would be critical and important. But you can just ask them to say, we're having a meeting and we just wondered if you had any accessibility needs. We are a very, open organization, and we want to be inclusive in our practices. So if there's anything that you need, could you please let us know in advance? Same thing if you're hosting an event, you could ask in advance, do you need accommodation, accessibility accommodation? You could talk to them, give them a number to call. But in the particular situation where they're visiting your establishment, you want to make sure that your people are trained who are greeting them. That's the most important thing, right?
And start with that in mind. Is the person, so
Yes.
that's kind of like standard policy. Someone's visiting us. Let's see if they need an accommodation for a disability. That's great. We're going to go to another question. Emily Patterson. Thanks, Emily, for the question. It says, this is a good question. Should we be implementing a type of policy for onboarding that states our company will work to accommodate employees for any type of disabilities? Is there a standard policy we should use? So should this actually be built into your HR policies, so that it's baked into the recruitment process?
So definitely, and I think that standard is definitely recommending reviewing your policies and your procedures, and including all of that, those aspects of accessibility, right, in those policies, because we need to ensure that everyone that you're removing all of those barriers. So, and obviously, you have a duty to accommodate. So, in the Accessibility Standards Act, it's also working, very closely with Canadian Human Rights. So if you look at some of the new information from Canadian Human Rights, that will help to guide you as well. So, and if you have questions about resources, where should I go for this? I would certainly recommend you reach out, and we can certainly redirect you to the proper resources. And oftentimes people don't really know where to go. They'll pick up the phone, they'll call me, or they'll drop me an email, and I will be of help wherever I can. That's,
Okay.
What we're here for.
And Emily, we're going to be showing you Linda's contact information in just a few minutes. And after the live broadcast, we're going to be again sending out a link to the replay video as well as Linda's. So I'm sure she can point you to some of those policy and guidelines that you can use as a starting point. We've got a LinkedIn user that's obviously keen to wanting to recruit people with disabilities. He's just, I think fundamentally in this question, he's saying, is any of this mandatory? So if let's assume you're a private sector SME, Linda, are what we communicating here today that you are required to accommodate and recruit people with disabilities?
So right now, I mean, it's at your discretion if you want to recruit people with disabilities. We do at Performance Plus Rehabilitative Care. We have a talent pool of individuals, and we also have a network across Canada of other organizations like us who also, have a talent pool. So if you're looking to recruit for a specific occupation, then we would talk to you about your needs. What are you looking for? More specifically, what are the skills and competencies that you require for this particular job? We would come back and we would match that particular candidate to your needs. Then we could help you with the actual making some recommendations for the recruiting process, the hiring process, the onboarding process, so you wouldn't have to do that alone. If you come to recruit from one of our persons with disabilities, a job seeker who's seeking a particular job in the workplace, then we would support that process. And there's a network of service providers. We're not the only ones, right?
Yeah.
So you could work with your local service provider if you're in another city. There are several across our city here in Ottawa and across the region.
And Linda, it seems to me in reading some of the questions, there are people interesting in starting a process with you, reaching out. Can you explain for us briefly what that process looks like? So if I phone Linda this afternoon and say, Linda, we really, aspire to be an accessible workplace. We need some help. Like, what is that? Where does the process go from there, Linda?
Generally, what I do is I like to have that conversation. People will email me and I'll say, well, let's book a consultation so we have a time to talk so I can probe for your needs, find out more about your organization, about its culture, of course, and what type of framework you might be looking for, where are you at now, what supports, where should we begin? And then we can put together a framework for you in terms of a strategy to help you and outline. We can do education and training for you and with you, whatever your specific needs might be. But we'll have that discussion and we can put a proposal together for you. If you are looking to recruit from our talent pool and you do need supports around education, we are here and we can provide those supports for you as well.
Okay, that's a really important point. So your prospect can start a conversation with you, needs, requirements, recommendations, proposals, or option number two, Linda, is someone can phone you and say, Linda, we really want to jumpstart this
Yeah.
and start recruiting someone. And I guess you'd want to feel comfortable and confident that you can accommodate those people. But we're confident about that, Linda. So let's
And
talk about some openings we have.
for sure. And we will support the accommodation process and help with that. Identify the person's needs. If you're looking to recruit an individual, we will make that very easy and very straightforward for you.
And we've never talked about this before. So that pool of candidates of people with disabilities, is that a large database that you have? How do you identify the people? How do you vet the people? Talk to us a little bit about that, Linda.
So actually, we do advertise our services to people with disabilities. So we do, we have a social media campaign, and people find us by word of mouth as well. And we get referrals from other organizations. And as I said, we're part of larger community networks that serve people with disabilities. And we are part of the Employment Ontario um, um, integrated employment services. So effective January the 1st, we're going into a new business model. There's lots of supports there for employers who want to engage anyone who comes from a marginalized group, including people with disabilities. So don't hesitate to reach out and we'll make those good connections.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point just to underline again that there is help there. So if you want to make this a reality, and we'll move maybe to some of our takeaways, because I know you're a very action oriented person, Linda, that if you want to make some progress on this, it is possible. It's not a mountain to climb. You're here to help. There's other community resources. So let's bring up our takeaways for today's session. We'll bring those on screen, and maybe we'll start trying to put some of this theory and practicality into action.
So, we're talking about making that commitment to be inclusive and accessible. So I think it begins with that first commitment. what is it that you want to do? And, you're not going to get there tomorrow. You're going to get there gradually. We're still working on our processes. Trust me, it's a work in progress. And I think the standards are there really to guide you along the way, to say, hey, these are some of the things that you need to do. We talked about, the leadership. Leadership needs to make that commitment because it has to come from the top. But everybody needs to be involved and everybody needs to participate. And then leadership, of course, has to commit those resources. What is it that you need? What is it that it's going to, what is my plan for the year? If you start now, then you will be ready if this does come into regulation, right? And you will be attracting great talent when they see that you're inclusive, especially that millennial generation. And we want you to create a plan, but we know that you're going to need some supports along the way. And change is a process, it's a journey, just like your career is, right? So if you undertake a good plan with a great framework, and but it all begins with that commitment. Am I committed to doing this? And we said we are committed, so we're going to call you on it. And so, Michael, I've called you on a few things over the years and said, Michael, you could make this better if you did this and that, right? So it's about that. It's about education. And employers will say, I can thank Performance Plus because now I'm an inclusive employer and they guided me. I hired some of the people, they guided me. And those employers have won awards for accessibility, so it's possible. It's really quite easy and very possible. And you don't have to do it alone.
In fact,
I
was just thinking about this. So 30 years ago, think about how things have progressed, right, Linda? So 30 years ago, it was probably pretty tough to integrate someone with a disability into your work. Not impossible, pretty tough. Today, it's easier, right? Because of technology, work
Yes.
from home. So this is something that we can deal with.
For sure. And I think the most important thing is that when I talk to employers and I sit with the human resource manager or the business owner, and I'll say, don't worry, we're here to help you every step of the way. And they go, oh my goodness, that makes me feel so much better. Right?
Yeah.
It's just removing that fear, really.
Yeah.
So if you reach out, we can have a conversation and I would be more than pleased to assist you.
Great. Let's bring up your contact information. And as that's happening, I just want to harken back to the last live broadcast we did with you. And you said, don't forget the business case for this, right? So you're increasing your pool of potential employees, and you're signaling to the rest of the people in your organization. You're elevating, in my estimation, your culture around being a great employer. So there's business case for this too. You've always said that to me. So
Yes.
here's Linda's information. PPRC.ca is the website. You're on social media. I follow you, Linda. You get some good posts and people can follow along. And just one thing as we wrap up here. So the accessibility standards that we were talking about here, is this a link that we could send out to people, Linda?
Yes, I can send you the draft review. Sure. I can send that to you, Michael. I was thinking about that this morning, actually, that people may want to have access to that.
Okay, that's excellent. So we'll get that link from you and pass it on to all of the registered attendees today. By the way, that's one of the reasons to register. We have people saying, "I'll just watch it live. I don't need to register." If you register with us for these live webinars, then we can send you extra resources. Well, Linda, we're going to wrap up now, but I want to thank you for what you do in the community. What an incredible milestone that's coming up for you. 30 years of helping integrate people with disabilities. That's a big impact on the community. So thank you for your personal efforts, your team's efforts, and wish all the great people at PPRC a fantastic 2024.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. And that was Linda Simpson from PPRC. Another great conversation. Always keen to speak with her. And as I said a couple times now, she brings that concept of wanting to be a good employer and the practicality of why you need to work on it and how to work on it. So we'll be sure to send some follow-up information to all of our registered attendees here today. So look, we're going to wrap up, but I want to remind everyone that you can visit obj.ca website for daily news updates. We talk about all issues, by the way. It's sometimes it's mergers and acquisitions, sometimes it's technology financings, but we get into a lot of these HR topics. Sarah on our reporting team is kind of our specialist in that. So we do some of this coverage. I also highly recommend you subscribe to our email newsletter, OBJ Today. I know we all have too much emails in our inbox, but this, I swear to goodness, is a time saver. You go to obj.ca, sign up, and basically in about 30 seconds, 60 seconds or less, you can scan all the headlines of today. You can find out what events we're working on, maybe awards programs that we're launching. And for those of you following on or watching us on YouTube, I encourage you to like this video, and click the red subscribe button and then the bell icon. If you click the bell icon, the bonus is you get notifications when we post new videos. That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank Paula for helping put this show together, and Lisa, and also Wendy for her role, and of course the great people at PPRC. I encourage you to reach out to them if you want to up your inclusivity in 2024. Thanks for watching today. Hope to see you soon. So long, everyone. Bye-bye.